my God. I'm so happy we're doing this call. I was like gonna let you in early. I was so excited. How are you? Laura's here. We're both here.
Oh,
So you're on the right plane, going in the right direction.
yes.
It's so good to have you. Put in the chat where you're from. I love to see all the places that you guys hail from. I can see some of you from Europe, and there's someone from Scotland, Sheena Cook, who just got a Gateless alum, just got her book deal. We love you, baby.
Yes. Oh, yay, Sheena's here.
So
Hi,
exciting.
Sheena.
Yeah, you guys, oh wow. Okay, this is exciting to see where you're from. Oh my goodness. There's a lot of different places. Well, New Jersey, Sherry, you're right down the street from me. So, hi from Croatia. Oh my God.
Ooh,
Yeah, that's exciting. I really want to go there.
me too. My Instagram feed, which knows that I am looking for like a nice swim, is constantly feeding me Croatia posts.
Oh my God. I know. And then somebody's from
Like,
Portugal. That's that other place.
yes, love Portugal. Went there on my honeymoon.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
a good place to
been there a
go.
couple of times.
Oh my goodness. Okay, you guys. Hi, John Lincoln. I see a lot of people from the academy teachers. Hi, hi, hi. And then some people I don't know. I have to say, I always love Laura's people. I told her that today. I was like, your people have been my favorites. Not that I play favorites, but they are awesome. So thank you guys for coming on over to my house. And
Yeah.
Laura, I know how busy you are, and I just have to say again, we're so excited to talk to you. You have so many important things to tell writers with work in progress, and so
Thank you. I'm
I
laughing because of the I know how busy you are comment because I'm not like I don't think I'm busier than anybody else. I really aim not to be. That's like my whole goal in life is not to be busy and to have nothing on my calendar. So
except writing
except writing and talking to you on our Zoom.
on our
Like
Foxers.
this is something I'm delighted to do and to have on my calendar.
Well, we're so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for coming. And guys, I was telling Laura before she came on, I've been reading the book again. I mean, I've read this book. First of all, I read it in manuscript. Second of all, she was in the academy, so I read it there. And then I've read it so many times since then because every time I recommend it, I'll open it up and start reading to a friend, and we'll get laughing so hard, which happened last night. But can I
Yeah.
read this, Laura? This page.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys are gonna laugh so hard. Okay, so this is in one of her essays that's called Tap That Talent, a 20-some Odyssey. So you guys know about Tough Titties if you got all my emails, which is basically this incredible memoir in essays that was published a few years back, but it is still sort of a near classic of growing up in the 90s and then sort of blooming into something really exciting, which Laura will tell you about today, but mainly like how she's made her living as a writer. And that is something that we're always told that we're never going to be able to do. Like, you think you're going to make your living out of that? You know, like, yeah, I actually am going to make a great living out of it. So, okay, so this is her trying to figure out like what she's going to do with her life at 20 something. I'm sure we all remember that. I knew one thing. I didn't want to sit alone writing long things. I'd pulled all-nighters and agonized writing every paper for school. I usually faked sick the next day, so often that the class joke was, Laura has AIDS. Okay, it was the 80s, so our jokes were problematic. Oh my God, weren't they ever? I'd once loved writing. At 10, I scribbled day and night, penning a novel that was a shameless ripoff of Huck Finn. My characters rolled in the dirt of the town square and said things like, "Don't you talk about my paw." I was my own biggest fan until I met that cruel voice called the inner critic. God, I miss that drive that comes from blind confidence. Now I didn't feel suited for the obvious writer's path of author or screenwriter, typing away in a garret a wastebasket spilling over with crumpled drafts and tears of self-loathing. No thanks. I wanted a job that harnessed my creative gifts while avoiding all that pain. I love this so much, Laura. And I
Thank
also
you.
like want you to talk about the inner critic today because one of the things Teresa and I were on the on the Voxer before this morning, and she's like, I can't wait for Laura's call because she is going to talk about like how to move through rejection, like how not to, which of course I promised everyone you would, but I want to start there. I want to start with
Okay.
that lowest point. Like what, how do you do it when you get rejections, when you're like in your inner critic? Tell us all your secrets.
Yeah. Well, I would say that I always tended to reject myself before anyone else could. Like I never felt like I had ideas. And that was the biggest problem, especially back then when the only paths were like write a book, a memoir, like a really a novel, because a memoir at that young age was sort of out of the question. Nothing had happened to me yet. I didn't feel like I had a memoir in me, a real life story. And then it was that, or write a screenplay, and I didn't have an idea for a screenplay, or write a spec script for TV, and I didn't have an idea for a spec script. And in fact, my friend Bruce, who's right here on the call, he and I had an idea for a book called, I think it was called How Not to Write, because both of us enjoyed not writing way more than we enjoyed writing. And it was long before, like, there are a lot of things that I hate about the internet and miss about the time before the internet, but there's so much, I don't think, there's no way I would have the career that I have now without it, because it opened up a whole the possibility of writing short, fun things. Writing, it started with blog posts, and then moving on to emails and email marketing. Like I can always come up with some short thing. It doesn't have to have a huge arc, doesn't have to have a real beginning, middle, and end. It can just be a nugget from my day, something I described, something I saw, something I heard, or ate, and that is enough to write about, and in my emails. But then, so like the inner critic stopped me for a long time, especially the voice that said I don't have any ideas. And I still face that, because I would love to write fiction, because that's what I love to read the most, and I still feel like, oh, I don't have an idea. And I know the idea will probably come from sitting down and writing, but I am always scared of that feeling of I don't know what to write. So
Yes.
so yeah, there's that. And then in terms of actual rejections, I mean, I started getting those, I guess, with the first editor, developmental editor, who I went to, who, but before I heard about you, somebody introduced me to an editor who he thought I would get along with great. She's a New Yorker. He thought she'd really get my work, etc. And so, like, we connected, and I sent her all a bunch of my stuff that I was working on for Tough Titties, and we agreed to meet on a Zoom call, and so we did. And the first thing she said to me was, okay, so some tough truths. And I was like, oh, this is not going to go well. And she was like, it's just really hard to sell nonfiction, a memoir or anything like, or a collection of essays, unless you've had a really interesting life. Like right now, I'm working with an ex-supermodel who was also a heroin addict, and she can't even sell her book. And then, or, you have to have like a real voice. And then she said, let's see, I'm looking at my bookshelf behind me, and at the books on, these bestsellers, and well, let's see, Wild, that was really so specific that it's universal. And then Sloane Crosley, well, she's really funny. And she just went through like all these authors who she decided I was not as good as. And basically told me, told me all the reasons why my book wouldn't sell, and then said, so I don't know where you want to go from here. what our next steps would be. I'm like, I don't think there are next steps for us.
That is so funny and so wrong. And I
Yeah.
remember because you sent it to me, I think before you told me that
Mm,
story. And I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. I don't know if you remember that first call, but I was like, oh, like blown away. And I wasn't writing, working with a lot of writers. And I was like, oh, this is a thing. Like, not only was it a thing, but I felt like it could be in a lot of different mediums. Like, I could see it as a series, I could see it as a book of essays, I could see you turning it into like a clear narrative arc memoir, like there was no problem seeing that it was going to sell. And then when you went out the door with it after working on it into, the book that it is, there were, of course, there's always
yeah.
like moving through the agents the book is trying to find its agent, right? And yeah, and you kept going there too. I mean,
Yeah.
you have that stick to itiveness.
Um, well, yeah, I mean, I'd put so much work into it, and I knew it had become a real imperative for me to write this book and make it and sell it and have it be a real published book. Like after I had put all that time into it, it's like I was really determined. And it was, for a long time, it was easy to knock me down and say, don't work on this. And I'd be like, okay, I won't. And at this point, it's like, I'm going to sell this book. So I took the rejections and kept querying agents. And it's not like I had like 60 rejections and then finally heard from somebody. I had like a good handful. I don't know if it was like 6 or 10 in a row or whatever. And it was a little dispiriting. You said, as soon as an agent says yes, you should accept it. You should work with them. And so I did. I said yes to the first agent who said yes to me. And I was glad that I did. And then I got a lot of those like kind rejections, which I started to realize were fairly boilerplate. At first, they seemed really specific and thoughtful, but like the writing, the material shows promise and the author shows talent, but unfortunately, I do not connect to the material in the way that I need to sell it. Like it turns out to be a pretty boilerplate rejection. Some were very nice and thoughtful for real, but and then when the agent took it out to publishers, they she told me like set aside these dates for like she gave me like 3 days in a row. Like block these off. So we're gonna have meetings with publishers. And I was like, okay, great. And as that date neared, I was like, am I still saving these dates? And she's like, yeah, yeah, we're talking, it's out to publishers now, keep saving them. And then that week I was like, am I still saving these 3 dates and we don't have anything on the books? She's like, yeah, Friday at 2 p.m. And I was like, what about Wednesday and Thursday? And she's like, we have one meeting as of now, and that's the one. And I had the one meeting with an editor, and the agent said to me, honestly, like I made this promise to you that I would not let a publisher switch it from what you are looking to write to something they want, which would be a marketing book or a copywriting book. And all these publishers are saying, we like it a lot, but would she be willing to make it a book about marketing or a book about copywriting? And they kept their word to me and said, no, she would not. And so there was one editor who was interested in me writing the kind of book that I wanted to write. And that's who made the offer.
Yeah, and Hachette is actually they're hard to get into, the publisher. So it was nice that it was that, it wasn't
Yeah.
like you had to wait until you got like, yeah, Mickey Mouse Press or whatever. It's a big
Right.
press. But also in that vein, love, like when you're writing your emails, which if you guys haven't signed up for Laura Belgray's emails, it's so many people have told me that she's the only email that I ever open. Like they're so good.
Thank
And
you.
this is this burst in your day of like humor and inspire and it's fun. It's fun to get them. So how do you decide between I'm gonna keep this for an email or I'm gonna move it into the book. You know, like when you how did you save material? Were you like, oh, this is definitely like part of the book? Did you use some of that material for like emails or articles? Like how did you manage the material?
I mean, some stuff that I had written emails about or articles about ended up being in the book. Partly because my editor had wanted to see my emails when she was deciding, like she had my proposal and she was like, the proposal mentions these great emails. Can I see some of them? And I already had a list of hand-picked emails that I loved and that people reacted really well to. So I sent her those and some articles I had written that have been published. And she was like, okay, this should be in the book. And this should be in the book. So she did that. And then from then on, there was never a feeling of, oh, shoot, I don't want to put this in an email because it belongs in the book. I didn't really worry about double dipping with any material. Like it just because it went into an email didn't mean it couldn't go into a book. So I didn't really have that dilemma. I think the tough part was more like trying to channel that feeling that I had, that breeziness that I had writing an email, the ease of it into writing the book, because the book just felt much harder. There were such much bigger expectations from a book chapter than there was from an email. And so I really tied myself in knots about that. And my friend Susie Moore, who you know, said to me one day, she was like, I was complaining about how hard the book was. And she's like, but you write these brilliant emails every day. Isn't this just that with a spine? And, or can't it be? And I was like, it really can't, but I wish. Um, it is a different kind of writing. And, you know, an email doesn't have to be perfect at all. Like you always have the next step. It's not permanent. Like it sits in someone's inbox. You can't change it once it goes out. But you always have like, okay, so there were typos in this, so it didn't really land, but part of it was good. There's always tomorrow. There's always the next one. Whereas a book really has to be just the best that you can make it. And that made it really challenging.
Yeah, and it has to breathe. It has so much room, you know, that you're trying to sort of fill in terms of what does this mean? Because in an email, you might arc to like an offering or, you know, some kind of deliverable. And in Tough Titties, you really were thinking about like what am I trying to say? I remember that where
Yeah.
you were like it was you were pushed to be sort of put the authority in author in a way and like think about what is my wisdom that I've learned in these, you know, 50 years or whatever it was. And how did you jump from that place? Like when you realize like, oh my God, all of these, like in the academy, we call it arc to meaning, you know,
Yeah.
you're arcing the story to something. Like, how did you finally wrap your mind around doing that in a different way than the emails? Like, what do you think kind of pushed you over to that place?
I think I was, because of like thanks to working with you and the academy, I was aware that they had to do that.
Mm.
That that was what that's where the difference was between a so what anecdote that your friends might love and a story that a stranger would find satisfying and get some meaning from. And so, like, you helped a lot with that because there were some pieces that I was like, I don't know what it's trying to say. I don't know. And I think you said, like, let's ask questions of it. Um, and you found places where it might, you know, where a point, like just putting one line would give it an arc to meaning or some kind of real meaning. And that was really helpful. And I learned through working with you to do that myself. And some, I mean, some chapters I was just at a loss and really needed the collaboration with you to do that.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch you in that process because there was so much validation from the storytelling. You're such an incredible storyteller. I mean, it really is your genius and voice too, which Rebecca Tolbert talked about. Your voice. She's part of the academy, so she knew you last year and when you were a luminary. And I think, when you have like such huge talent and then you're expected to do this other thing too that the publisher is pushing for, and your editor was very more abstract or like a little vaguer about those edits, it was very interesting to watch you kind of be like, no, I'm gonna do this. It was like a harnessing. And yeah, I would work with you, but often I would just kind of throw these things out and you would be like, no, that's not it. Like you knew that there was
Yeah.
something, and it would took me kind of throwing things at you and you would be like, no, that's not it. That's not what this means. That's not, you know what I mean? But it was a good process of then like coming to it, and I think
Yeah.
it's a good that dynamic, I think, was a really good example of like, you don't want the editor to come in and tell you what to do. You want maybe them to be like, well, let's try stuff, but you don't want them to have their own vision for your work because then you can't have the vision. And that was really clear. Even if you weren't sure how you were going to get there, I felt like you had such a vision for your work. Like you had a vision for the tone of it, and like you knew what wasn't working, and then you would get there. And how do you think you've developed that, like that strength? I mean, is that just practicing writing? Do you think it was like how you grew up that you were really validated in your voice? Like, how do you think you got that going where you were like, I know to fight back about who I am and what I want to say? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's because I've been blogging and emailing for so many years and getting, I mean, this is what I love about blogging and emailing or posting anything where you can get actual feedback from people almost in real time, like as soon as you hit publish or send. Um, like I knew that people responded to my voice, and they would say, I love your voice, or I wish I had a voice like that. I want to find my voice. I felt confident in it. I felt confident in the way that I could write. And I think like where I wasn't confident was in, how do I make this a book? How do I make this stuff book worthy? But and my editor's feedback was, so much of it was so unhelpful because she would just say, okay, now you're really rambling, or not cute, not funny. Where is the voice? What are you trying to say here? What is the voice of this book? It's all over the place. And that's where I was like, honey, I am voice. Um, I didn't,
Totally.
I was like, screw you. But there were some places where she was helpful, where she would, and I didn't like it, but where she was right in the end. But there were a lot of places where she was just negative, and that was tough to kind of address because looking back, I'm like, okay, she's right. I'm not really saying anything here in
Mhm.
this early draft. I'm telling an anecdote, and you're kind of left with a, okay, that happened.
Yeah.
And it can't live like that in a book. And I also reading when I was working on it, I started reading a lot of memoirs and essay collections, and most of them were by celebrities or well-known authors. And I read one by Casey Rose Wilson, she has a podcast that I love. She was on SNL and was fired years ago because she was fat, which she's very much not. But I really like her voice and love her podcast, and it's a Real Housewives podcast. And read her book, and some of it was great. Some of it was like, oh, I want to write a chapter like that, an essay like that. And other parts were like, it ended with like, and it was with some line like, a great time was had by all, and made me say, like, okay, why did I just read that? what what was that about? So it kind of shone a light on what I was doing, like held up a mirror to the parts where my editor had been like, what are you trying to say here? Why did I just read this? And it's like, okay, it's true. You really do have to give it having a voice isn't enough, making it funny isn't enough. It has to have some kind of meaning in there.
Yeah, it's amazing to read celebrity memoirs, learning like what not to do.
Hmm.
I remember reading Marsha Brady's memoir. I was like sick and I was like in the house that I was house sitting for, and I was like, well, whatever, give it a go. But it was so sort of self-pitying, and I was like, oh God, this is like a real craft lesson in like how not to feel sorry for yourself during a memoir. I finished
Yeah.
it, but
Oh,
yeah, and then of course I
there's
want to
something
know.
there.
I want to know about Marsha Brady and her self-pity. Um, so yeah, the whole thing about the editor is interesting because it's sort of an unreliable narrator then. It's like some of this works, but then
Yeah.
then a lot of it doesn't, and you're trying to kind of sift it out. But I think that also speaks to a strong writer that you're willing to sift it out. You're willing to say like, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to run with it, even if, the rest of this is really frustrating me, or I'm not on the same page as this person or whatever. And I saw that too as being really, really incredible. And there's a jump. It seemed like there was a jump for you, love, between like I mean, you really have touched gold as a writer. When you started this copywriting, it was like you were getting into rooms that, I mean, you always kind of like brush it aside with a lot of humility, but you were in rooms where people were doing big things, the whole television phase that you had. And then you started doing work teaching copywriting, and that has been so successful. And I think one of the things that feel about the writing industry is it's difficult. It's a challenge once you get in there because there's a real competitiveness about which books are going to make it. And also once you get in there, like this, they're very hard on writers. And how do you think that you were able to keep your sense of self? I mean, I know we had that whole summer of doubt where you
Yeah.
were like calling me, and I would be like, just go on vacation or whatever. And Terry was like talking to you and stuff. And that's so normal. But like when we all go through those summers or those periods, and what would you say was sort of like, how did you get through it without like giving back your book deal or being like, oh God, I can't do this? Like, what do you think was?
Yeah, I mean, there was some ideation there, like of of giving back my book advance and just calling it quits. But it was really just ideation. It was just, fantasy. Um, and I knew that I couldn't do that to myself. I knew it would be the worst thing I could possibly do for my self-esteem, for my in my life. Like I had this book deal and yeah, it was torturing me then, but I knew that I would get through it. I knew that I had material that would be a fun read and that people would love if I could just push through that horrible period. And I think you gave me really good advice when you said, just put it away. And I was like, we were invited to a friend's birthday who always has destination birthdays in Paris. And I was like, oh, I can't because I'm on deadline. And should I push my deadline? And I don't know, that would be a real embarrassment. And you were like, push the deadline, go to Paris, do not think about your book. Do not open the document. Don't do anything. Like you need to some distance from it for a bit. And that was the best advice. And when I came back to it, um, I was no longer like, I don't know, pushing a boulder up a hill.
Yeah.
I felt it was fresher to me. I did need to put it aside for a while.
Yeah, it was like you were kind of bearing down on it. Yeah, it's interesting when that, excuse me, that inner critic gets jostled by having fun, like having fun with friends or laughing your ass off or whatever you have to do in order to push through. And sometimes it's the deep work, and sometimes it's just like I can't think about this. I'm breaking up with it for a little while. It's very interesting. And Laura, like, what would you say in terms of um, one thing with nonfiction writers, not with fiction, but with nonfiction is like you have to get you have to get into the conversation, right? You have to get the email list going, like you tell everyone. You have to at least show up on social media, which you do with such authenticity. You know, it's not like you put on all your makeup and like sit in front of a thing. You're just like walking
Can't
along,
be
like
asked.
getting coffee or and you also have published in like the big media. And what would you say about people pitching and getting started? Because there's a lot of rejection there too, that you have to keep at arm's length in order to just like keep moving through, you know, in terms of media, but also in terms of just telling yourself it's not just a book. Like you've done a lot of things with the written word. You're not just focused on I'm going to get this book published. You're like I'm going to do a lot of things with the work. So, what would you say to people who have a hard time kind of getting out of the book mode and into this place of like, I'm going to get media, I'm going to, you know, all the things that we talk about?
Yeah, well, it's tempting to listen to those voices who say, like, just let it be enough that you wrote a book. Be happy with that. You should celebrate that. Absolutely. You should be proud of that. But that isn't where it ends. Like you put all that work into writing a book, all that effort, all that for some of us, most of us, agony, um, all the, especially when it's your dream to have written a book. I think it's a tragedy if you say, okay, I wrote a book. Now let the universe do what it's going to do because the universe is not a book publicist and it's not going to do you would have to have such a huge stroke of luck for the universe to to get your book to make your book a bestseller without you doing anything. So I just threw everything at it. So pitching to media, I didn't get that much. Like I pitched a lot and ended up with two things, really only one thing that was significant, and that was a piece in L um, that was called "Why Won't People Just Let Me Not Be a Mom?" And it tied into the chapter "Baby Fever" in the book about never having baby fever, and that was great. It was also great to have that logo, the L logo, on my like as seen in, and it's really worth it to pitch a lot to media, and there are programs to help you with that or different people. I'm sure you have resources, Suzanne, to connect them with, but it's it's absolutely worth it to pitch a lot. Daisy, I know, like got things in Cup of Joe, tried to connect me. I didn't follow through with everything. There were some times when I was just like, I can't. I'm already doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this, but I could have taken it further. And I did get an excerpt into Business Insider, which is a weird place for it, but um, that was sort of like a toss off because the editor went MIA and kind of screwed it up and published it without any context or anything. So that didn't do anything for me, but at least, I could say I was in Business Insider. Um, but I feel like you have to do all the things. So media is one of them. But another big thing is, I think, building a list, whether you do that in email list. I think Substack is a great way if you have no idea where to start building a list and or don't have one yet. Substack is a great place to start because it's for authors. It's tech dummy friendly. You don't need any tech savvy to do it, and the discoverability is still really good over there. It will push your Substack out to people. I mean, we all know how that works. We get it suggested to us once we're signed up for one. We find more. So build an email list and make those people. I recommend, even though it's like, oh, I'm already writing a book, I don't have time to write to an email list. There's always something to say. If you're an author, you're always thinking, you're always having ideas. A lot of them don't fit in the book. And so you can write essays, little nuggets to your email list and build loyalty, build that like know, like, and trust that's going to make them want to buy your book and also want to tell people about it. And if you do have a big enough email list, you can create, even if it's a small one, you can create a tiny launch team. But my launch team was essential. for me in getting the word out. I call them
Yeah.
my titty committee.
Yeah, I remember that. That was really, I mean, also Laura has, after she published the book, and as you guys know, it was a bestseller. It was, Kelly Ripa held it up on the morning show. It did very good things. It was a Times Square billboard. Everybody was showing it in their windows. I mean, it was a very big launch. It was very exciting. I love it was such some book launch party. Some of us are here were there. It was so awesome. So and there was not just one. There were multiple launches in its way. So in terms of her ability to synthesize, like a lot of people who have graduated from
Oh,
this is doing it right now. Deepa did it
okay.
in a big way. Um, and you synthesized it into a program which is called Book Launch Hero. And I think that really, Book Launch Hero really helps people understand what the launch is because we get very focused on the platform, we get very focused on the book, we get very focused on the agent, we get very focused on which publisher, we get very focused on copy edits, and then we forget, like, that don't stop swimming, like,
So
to see kind of, I mean, I knew a lot of it, but I didn't know all of it, but mostly to have it sort of in one place was really cool. I loved that.
thank
um
you.
yeah, that was awesome, really great.
I saw a question about my
Yeah, your book
uh
proposal. So Amanda's
yeah,
asking, like, I said about outlines at the last symposium session, like just write, and a lot of people get the advice to write a book proposal in order to, like, I mean, you have to have one for a nonfiction
yeah.
book to pitch it, but you don't need it to write it, right?
I mean, like, I would have loved to have a real map of what I was writing. I did form one. Like, I laid out all the chapters that I was probably going to include in my proposal. So that was an outline of sorts. I was sort of building the plane as I flew in terms of what is this book really about? Like, what fits in this book and what doesn't. I wrote a lot of chapters that didn't fit, and I would have kind of sleepless nights thinking, how am I going to wedge that chapter in? Because I love it so much. And all that. So I mean, it depends what kind of thing you're writing. Like, this is a memoir and essays, really. And for me, chronological was the way to go. And we divided into three parts: part one, part two, part three. And part one was kind of, you know, growing up, middle school, high school, college. And then part two was my early years, like being a bar hoe, and then my first jobs and all that kind of stuff, being lost in my 20s. And then part three was more about settling down, finding my way, figuring things out. And that structure really helped until you had it laid out. Now, if you're writing some sort of instructional, prescriptive nonfiction, I think you really do need an outline for sure. Um, that just the way you would for a course or anything that, like, that's something that is teaching, really. So you have to have an outline. Um, but maybe you end up forming it after you've written a whole bunch of stuff. That might happen too. But I think this says, oh, my opinion. Amanda asked my opinion about writing a book proposal to pitch the book once it is written. Wait, is that you who said she wrote the book before the book prop?
Yeah, you
Uh,
you didn't write the book proposal before you wrote your book.
no, I wrote, in a way I did, in a way I didn't. I wrote a ton of material before. I wrote, like, I don't know, might have been nearly 100,000 words before I wrote the proposal, and had to figure out from that mess, like, what is this book about? I knew the title, but I didn't know the subtitle. I didn't really know what it was about. I just knew vaguely. W- didn't know what it would focus on. So writing the proposal helped figure that out in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I would buck up against it a little bit to say that 100,000 is a rough draft. It may
Yeah,
not
yeah,
be, you know what I mean? But
right.
it is a rough draft. And I think the thing is that a lot of people try to sell before they write the book, before they
Hmm.
actually know what they're trying to say. And even, I mean, it's one thing if you're a CEO and you're like, just trying to get speaking gigs or something like that. But if you're really trying to move the needle in terms of the conversation, I think Laura really had a very instinctual understanding that you have to write a lot. You have to figure out what you're saying, what your stories are, who your characters are. You have to have a banquet in order to choose from that banquet. And if it's just like I have an idea and 40 pages and then you try to go to the book proposal, it off or even an outline, it's almost like you have to write into what am I trying to say? What am I doing here? Why am I even on here? And also to make sure there's a voice because you had written forever. I mean, you were a
Yeah.
writer. A lot of people come to this and they've done something else completely different all their lives. And of course, you can write a book from outline, but I can tell you that people who write from outline, it can be very dry. It's like, where's the juice? Like, if you read Laura's book, it feels like you're actually having coffee with her. Like, it feels like, oh, person is here. And that is the result of just letting yourself go on the page, letting the stories go, not knowing where you're going for a while, I think. And that was really beautiful about the book that I saw in Rough Draft, which you're saying, is that a book or not? And that's just a definition thing. But I would say with you, one of the things that I really resonated with and why I picked that book up to work with it was just like, this is what we want is this kind of voice, this kind of person. I felt like you were like in my house and we were like chatting and I realized like in an outline it's like sort of rigid and that you hadn't really done that. You hadn't tried to strangle the work into a certain thing. So I loved that about your work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did have a friend who, like, during my crisis, summer of doubt, sat down with me and she's like, okay, we're going to organize this. Let's, let's name these chapters and name them like they are articles for Business Insider, and went through all of them and like gave a title to each one of them. She's like, "No, you're going to do like you have till X date, you're going to need to write a chapter a week and just fulfill each one of these titles." And then later I walked away, walked away feeling good, like, okay, I can do this. It's organized. And then I looked at it like the next day and it's like, I don't want to write any of these. So it's just not my style. Whereas, in a way, if somebody had given me a book outline, and said, "These are the things you have to write about. Like, this is what your chapters are, and this is what you have to write about, and that's your assignment, and there's no changing it. You have to deliver on this." It might have been easier. I would probably have been able to make that work, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
have believed in it very much.
Yeah, and that's and what I love about that story is it's emblematic of what we were talking about before, that you knew that there needed to be an organization, but you were like, but that's not my organization. And I think that
Yeah.
kind of sovereignty or, autonomy in the process, knowing your voice, knowing what you want to do and don't, but being malleable about it. Like you weren't against having somebody come in and kind of interrupt the process and say, let's do this but you wouldn't necessarily take it whole hog. You knew
Right.
yourself well enough. And I feel like there was so much time that you spent with the work. It was impossible for you not to be intimate with that book and say, like, you can come in here, but don't you dare come in there. You know what I mean? 'Cause I have a
Yes.
thing going on here.
Right. Right. But part of the like working with you in those times where I did get a little combative, where I was like, no, I wouldn't say that. That's not the way I would say it. That's not what I'm saying here. That is actually helpful. I respond well in a way and get good ideas from what I consider bad ideas. Your ideas are never bad, but when I was like, I wouldn't say it that way, and got really bratty about it, I would usually have like it would take me a little time, but I was like, this is what I would say. So finding the the contrarian angle to a suggestion can be really helpful. Lately, just in my email writing, like I created this tool, this AI tool called the Point Finder. Um, and like it helps you find the point of your story, like helps it arc to meaning, especially for your emails where you just want to connect it to an offer or something like that. And it works really well, but most of the suggestions it gives me, I'm like, no, that's not it. That's not it. I'll tell you what it is. It's this. I'm thinking this or this. So that it will just give rise to the ideas that are actually in there, but I haven't really realized yet. And I like bouncing ideas off of someone who has different ideas, or a thing that has ideas that I don't like. I mean, I will yell at that thing too. I'm like, those are all stupid. But here's what I'm thinking.
I know it's so great. And it's great to have a relationship like that where it's like
Yeah,
we were fine. It didn't bother us. You know what I mean?
right,
You'd be like, no, 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 don't change my sentence. I don't like that. You know what I mean?
right.
No big deal. You know what I mean? We're like, okay. So yeah, and AI is kind of like that. Like you're never gonna get in a real fight because it's like, just a
Because it's a kiss ass. It's like, you're
yeah.
totally right to call me out on that. Yeah.
I know it's like playing with the euphoria in our mind. It's trying to get us addicted to its like
Yes.
love or something serotonin.
Uh-huh.
I know it's always like you are a champion. No one ever thought of that in
Right. You're
the
right. My ideas really are lacking the punch that only you can give it.
world. Oh my God, AI. Well, it's funny because Terry put her as one of her essays into ChatGPT to say like, can you structure this for me? Did I tell you this already? I might have.
No.
Okay, so she put it in there and she showed me the first essay and the second. And actually the structure was quite good. Like it moved the first paragraph and put it later. It was a good
Yeah.
structure, but then I looked at its explanation and I was like, oh no, it has nothing to do
Oh,
with craft. Like it was so
right.
opinionated and sure of itself, and sort of like, you put this paragraph here because you never want to start with a story. And I'm like, honey, you gotta start with story most of the time. Like, what the hell? So yeah, it's like it's the unreliable editor again. Like, oh,
Yes.
that was great, but that was really not great. Anyway, do
Right.
you guys have other questions? Like, what do you want to ask? You can ask anything, like anything, either anything about Laura's private life or no, I'm just kidding. You can ask
I am an
anything
open book.
about the book process. Okay, who has her hand? Udam? Udam? Is
Ah,
that you,
Oh,
honey?
hi. Oh my God, Laura and Suzanne.
hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for this. What a great opportunity. I just feel like through osmosis, I feel great. Being here. I'm
Thank you.
like,
Good.
it in, let me inhale it. My question, Laura, for you is, so so I've been, is this like a separate project or would this be one book? I'm trying to marry modern science with ancient wisdom into this framework. I'm calling it the MAPS fitness. So it's mental, emotional, energetic, physical, and spiritual fitness and wellness. And it's a holistic program, but I'm bringing a lot of trauma, neuroscience stuff in there, but I'm trying to make it funny and comedic.
Mhm.
So I'm bringing the inner chaos crew. So I created a bunch of inner chaos crew, like, the Asian mother syndrome that goes into that program for Asian mother syndrome survivor. And, we're like, yeah, it's like, um, my like I have like the perfect Peter on steroids, the grief goblins, and all kinds of crazy stories that come in. but also
Right.
I want to also educate on the neuroscience, and because I've been training on trauma, and I am also a trauma survivor. So my thing is this: I'm trying to figure out my audience, and there's an audience that is corporate execs, the traditional male leaders. For some reason, I feel like I need to heal that relationship with my dad. I feel like and I want to cater to them, but then I'm like, my voice is getting stripped away.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I would say don't don't cater to, don't speak to an audience who's not going to appreciate your voice. Write to the person who needs to hear it. And don't think about like, okay, well, these suits are not going to like the fun that I'm having with these concepts. I- if you do that, then you're just going to shut down and mute yourself or water yourself down. I think like I insisted on writing for the people who wanted to hear my stories and not for kind of person who I just met somebody this past Saturday at like a charity benefit who a friend introduced us and said, "Oh, you have to read Laura's book. It's so funny." And she said, "I am a voracious reader." And I said, "What do you like? Fiction, nonfiction?" She's like, "Anything, as long as I learn something from it." So I'll read historical fiction because that teaches me something. I never want to read anything that doesn't make me smarter. And I was like, well, tough titties won't make you dumber. I can say that much. But I was like, it is not for her. I mean, she might end up loving it, but I would never write to a person like that. I do have an audience of like a lot of people in my audience are people who read books that are going to help them, like, make them better at business, make them a better person. And I did not write it really for them. I wrote it for the people who were writing back to my email saying, I love this story so much. That's it. You got to write for the person who's going to love the way you want to write it.
Yeah. And I think the beauty of what you're trying to do, also, if I can interject, is that that's different. Usually there is a dryness to these
Hmm.
books, like what you're describing, and this is not dry. And I think to take out the humor, as you're noticing, it's work. It's work to take out your own voice, and then it will be work for the reader to read that. And what you want is ease always with the reader. You want them to feel very easeful when they're reading your work. So if you're easeful when you're writing it, and usually the humor, comes out in story even more than voice. It's just like how you perceive the world. That's like what we see in Laura's emails. It's like, oh, this is funny. Like somebody else could have had that happen and it might be dry, but she lets it be funny. She lets the story be funny. She lets her point of view be funny. It's same with Tough Titties. We all had trouble finding jobs probably in our 20s, but she made that funny. And so I think that storytelling is like where that humor is going to come out without you even trying. But it's so exhausting not to write in your own voice. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
you have to, yeah. That's a great
yeah.
question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
appreciate.
Thanks, Udom.
Yeah,
I
it's a
felt
great,
so stifled by that. So
yeah.
I feel much expensive. So thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
Thanks for asking it. And Laura, what's the biggest lesson you learned in the process that you're going to take into your next writing project? This is so
Um, I, I don't even know. I'm like, feel like I'm starting from square
Some
one
bear
with anything
motion.
I go into, except like, I, no, I don't know. Nothing. Maybe not grip it so tightly when I'm launching it, like this must be a New York Times bestseller. I think the biggest lesson is you can't just decide it's going to be a New York Times bestseller because I mean, you can't even hope too hard and think that your success rides on that because it is like an impossible thing. And it's not based on sales. It's based a little bit on sales, but also based on their agenda over there. It's decided by committee. And so that's something that I would take into it. But I wouldn't want to go through another summer of doubt again. I think just like push through the material and trust that it's going to come out right, and get through those parts where it's like, I don't know, get through the I don't know. That's the writing process lesson, is that you will get through it. You just have to keep trying to like touch it every day, instead of, don't just have it open on my laptop, that, with a document that says book, and then proceed to pace for the rest of the day and not even touch the document, not even, like, that fear of going into it and of even looking at it was way more painful than, like, not doing it was so much more painful than doing it. So that's the biggest lesson about process.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And even though you hired the publicist, I'm just thinking about like your launch. You kind of realize like I'm going to figure out how to do this launch myself. And then when you go into the next iteration, the next writing project, you'll know how to do that. I mean, you wrote Book Launch Hero, so it's like there are a lot
Yeah,
of things you're not going to have to reinvent, right? Because you did it this way.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just really great because yeah, the publicist often doesn't, unless you're like doing something on parenting or something medical, or it's hard for the publicist to get in there. And what Laura found was like, I'm gonna do this myself, and she did, and develop the program so that other people can do it too, because it is massive, and like you're learning it for the first time, and you have to do it very quickly after the book goes to sale, and meaning when it's in the process of publication, you only have so much time, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
so
one
that
thing I would definitely do again is talk about my book and the process of writing it to my audience all the way through, because that gets them anticipating it. It gets them rallying around you, excited for you when it's finally a book. So including them in the whole book journey.
yeah, that's interesting. Yep. Yeah, that's interesting to have that. And also you have your whole gateless community. So now you have like people around you that are also launching, that are going through it, that are which is nice. I think it's nice to have friends that are kind of in the same landscape. And sometimes when it's your first book, you haven't acquired those friends yet. You haven't found your community. And that can be hard. So I feel like going into the next, it's gonna be easier. It's going to be easier. I mean, you did it. It's a very hard thing to do, and you did it. And
Yeah.
Jennifer Cranston,
Yep, you
you have
got
a
it.
question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got it. Just like it's spelled. Thank you for taking my question. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Um, I want to hear about the actual meetings with the publishers and what that dialogue was like. So you have the full thing, you're selling it, and some of them are telling you to change it and some of them are not. But what is that push pull act? What does it actually feel like? What is that? I mean, did you find it interesting, exhilarating, depressing? What was the actual like takeaway emotionally from the whole thing? Like,
Yeah.
um, you
Well,
know,
I did, it is publisher singular, not plural. I had one meeting with one publisher, and heard about the others who wanted to change it. And as for those, I was kind of like, okay, not surprised. I knew that's what people want right now, is prescriptive. They want another Atomic Habits. That was hot then as it is now. And I am like, I need Atomic Habits to even read Atomic Habits. I can't even get through the book. So it wasn't going to be that. But the one editor I met with was tough. And it wasn't an immediate like, ooh, that went well, she's gonna buy it. She asked me some questions. She said she loved the voice. But she's like, I brought it to our meeting in-house and pitched it, and people looked at the chapters, and that they said like, oh, she seems really entitled, and is this, like, I don't feel sorry for her, and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, well, my she said, what do you say to that? And I'm like, this book doesn't ask anybody to feel sorry for me. It's not a it's not a pity me book. It's not a whiny book. And yes, it is about somebody who grew up with privilege, but that shouldn't make it any less of an interesting book. Like that shouldn't rule it out. This was in 2020, so people were especially hard on privilege at the time, the big time of check your privilege. But so I had to convince her that it wasn't a whiny, poor me book.
Yeah, that's a
That's
great.
very interesting from the standpoint of she seemed to be quizzing you about how to sell it, is basically how
Hmm.
she was quizzing you.
Yes.
Speaking from a PR perspective, I had my own PR firm. That was I'm a recovering PR person. She's trying to figure out how to sell your book, and that's how she wanted you to give her the verbiage. That's interesting. So that's super. Thank you so much for taking the time and answering my question. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the question. It's a really
Yes,
good
be
one.
well. Thank
Yeah, and I would say that so many people who go to sell, that will be a conversation, because publishing is sitting in an office or in a cubby or whatever. It's really like Laura was out there. She knew how to talk about her work. She'd been doing it forever. She's not in corporate, right? Or she's not at a lit agency, like just putting her head down from 9 to 5. So I think there is a way in which we're informing them. This is how you sell this, and the premise has to be tight. It has to be sort of a bang. When you get that query, you have to have sort of a premise that sells, something that they can throw out at lunch. They're like, oh, I'm interested in that. And if it doesn't have that, sometimes it kind of feels a little, right, a little like soup or whatever, like where's my
Yeah.
hold here? So yeah, I feel like that conversation happens so much, and you were really ready for it, Laura. I mean, you had thought about that a lot, like, what is the premise of this book? What is this about? It's really interesting to watch you.
Yeah, well, kind of. We worked on it together, like a sort of log line, and it was hard for me because it still is in a way. Sometimes I flounder when I'm caught off guard and somebody says, "What's your book about?" and I don't have it practiced. And because it is sort of hard to nail down, there are many different themes going throughout it, and I usually land on Steven's line, as my husband, who called it "loser sex in the city." So. I usually end with that, and then people say, "Oh, okay, got it." It's Shazam for birds line.
That is so funny. Okay, you guys, we are out of time. It's like 4 minutes late for her to get on with her life. There are a couple other questions, Laura, but I can always
I'm
let you.
happy to take more questions if
Okay.
you don't have a heart out. I don't.
Okay, okay, good. Thank you. And we won't keep you forever, but it is nice to try to get at these. Okay,
Yeah.
so someone with the last name Baldwin has their hand.
Yeah, I saw Baldwin.
Okay. Let me
Well,
unmute you,
yeah,
love. I'm seeing
there
you
she is.
talk. Where is she? Do you know? Let me find you, honey.
Hey,
So
I'm
Yeah,
here.
there
there
we
you
go.
are.
Hi.
Okay, great.
Thanks. Hi. I'm Kathy.
Hi,
I
Kathy.
just put Baldwin. But my question is, how important is having a publicist or agent? And at what time um, do you bring one in and how?
Yeah, so it's not an or. You definitely almost definitely need an agent. Some people are handed a book deal and it's fabulous, and what they need is a lawyer to look at it. But if you are shopping for a book deal, got to have an agent. And so you get that when you're ready to, like, I would say if you're writing nonfiction, you want a proposal first, ready to send to agents. And if you're writing fiction or a memoir, true memoir that's not a collection of essays, you have to write the whole thing, I believe. So right, Suzanne? Like fiction or memoir, you write the whole thing and send that to agents,
That's right.
correct?
You
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
So mine's nonfiction, and I could be done pretty soon. Um, but I haven't even thought about an agent. My husband published with Addison Wesley, but it was a technical book, and they threw a contract and an editor and everything at him, so it was an easy publication. But I don't know how to do any of that.
Can I take this, Laura, real quick?
Yes, please do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
This is one
just
for
for
you.
those of you who don't know me, I run Gateless Writing, which is a We've been in business for 15 years and we help writers get to the point of publication and then beyond publication. And that's how I know Laura. So essentially, if you have a nonfiction book, and you go big, you're going to need an agent, right? That's just what you need. Like if you go with Random House or Scribner or any of the big four, they've consolidated now into the big four. They used to be like the big 11. So if you are not going in that direction, like you maybe don't have the platform or you don't have sort of the book that has the big through line or the premise, it's okay because there are other ways to get the book published, which are like smaller publications, there's hybrid, there's university, there's like a bunch of them. Usually, even for those, you'll need an agent, maybe a different kind of agent than what Laura went with. Laura went big. It was like, let's get this with one of the big four. Let's get it with a huge agent. Let's go that direction. Not everybody needs to do that. And sometimes you won't do that or you'll do hybrid. And then once you get the agent, you'll sell it. They'll sell it for you. They're like your real estate agent sells your house to somebody. They're going to sell your book to a publisher. And then when the publisher buys it, eventually after the copy editing and the proofing and everything like that, you're going to ask yourself, do I want to get a publicist? And this really depends on your book. Or am I going to launch it and take Book Launch Hero, which is like Laura's program, that shows you this is what you have to do to launch it. But the publicist is on down the line. And that process can take, right, Laura, like 18 months it took for Tough Titties to get into, like, from the time she found her agent to the time that it was on a shelf. It was about 18.
Yeah. I found my agent in, I think, late spring of 2020, May or June. And then it was on the shelf in 2023. It was originally going to be, I believe, fall of 2022. So it could have, had I stuck to my deadline, my original deadline, could have been 2 years. And some books come out way faster. Sometimes if it's a timely thing, the publisher would say, like, we got to move fast on this, and there will be a way faster turnaround.
So how do you get an agent?
You get an agent through a very lengthy process of like figuring out what your genre is, who publishes in your genre. There's like, in the Academy, which is our 10-month program that gets you to the point of getting an agent, we have an entire like 2 months where we're dealing with how to get an agent. It's
Oh, good. Oh, good.
process.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, it really depends on what you've written and like who's going to have that tonality, are you going to get an agent? Are you going to go with hybrid? You know what I mean? So there's like
Right.
it's sort of a whole thing that is part of the publishing process. And usually, like you said, you're done. Usually you either find an agent then, or you spend kind of a time going over the book and revising it, making sure it's like so tight. Because once you put it out there for the agent, if it's not like spick and span, you're going to get all these no's, and then you can't re-ask them to be your
Right.
agent. So that's sort of the like, catch 22 there is like you wanted to be like, wow, So yeah, it's a great question though. And
That's good. Thank you.
yeah, it's all about how complex the industry is. But yeah, but that's
Yes. And I'll say a word on publicists, because I did hire one as well as doing all the things that I was doing myself. Um, I realized, like, when the in-house publisher at Hachette said to me, like, do you have anyone you can reach out to? Because I'm not getting any nibbles from the one sheet that you rewrote. Like, I had to rewrite all her stuff because it was terrible, and then she was blaming me. I was like, okay, I'm doomed. She's not going to do anything for me. She hasn't landed me anything. And this was in May, and my book came out mid-June. So that's when right away I asked somebody an author I knew, whose book had done great. I said, did you use a publicist? Did you like them? And she connected us, and I hired a publicist for 2 months. And they helped me get podcasts mostly. That's what they helped me land. It was podcasts that I couldn't get myself. I got a lot of podcasts myself because they were in my world and knew me or had connections, but the ones in like the Dear Media kind of world, the Call Her Daddy world, I couldn't land those myself, or the comedy podcast, and so they helped me with that.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, right.
It's a whole thing. I mean, one of my Academy writers is now with a publicist who's just doing her right. I mean, it's amazing, but it's very prescriptive. It's not like a book of essays or a novel or anything like that. It's like, like I said, she's a parenting expert, and this is a publicist who knows parenting, and it's niche and it's super expensive. So it's like there's this other way to do it that is in Laura's book launch hero that she did after the book came out, and she knew how to do it. And I think, there's so many ways to sort of skin that cat or slice that cucumber. And it's like, that's what's exciting. And that's also can be really overwhelming for you guys. Yeah, and Margaret, you don't, once an agent says no to represent you, just for that book, you can't go back again. But you can go back with your second book and be like, hey, I still love you and I have another book and do you want it? So, and then we're going to take one last question. Because
I see one from Colleen there, which is
yeah,
interesting.
I
You see
love that
that?
question. Yeah, I want you to answer that. What do you
Yeah,
do?
so Colleen said, what do you do about an audience on Facebook, family included, who would not agree with your ideas or philosophy, your humor, even the use of the word titties? I have stories I want to share, but they would not be well received by some friends. Do I unfriend them? Where do I put my stories? I would say that, first of all, Facebook is not necessarily the place to write your to put your stories. I think that you want to build an email list, build an audience of people who subscribe to hear your stories, and you can put some of them on Facebook, and say, if you want, you want to hear more like this, or I'm writing a book, and like I want readers as I build it, come over here and sign up and you'll get these in your inbox. I think that's really the way to go, because it's no fun to write. Your writing's going to be different. It's going to be tamped down, and watered down if you are writing to avoid pissing people off. It's never a good outcome if you're writing to avoid pissing people off, or to avoid being annoying, or to make everybody like you. That's just not the way to write anything good and honest. So, if you have to unfriend everybody who and block everybody who you think is going to react negatively, but I would say have something that people can subscribe to is the best option.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And Substack is great. Email lists are great. Yeah, you have a lot of options there, but yeah, you don't have to unfriend anybody if you don't want to. Everybody's always afraid of what people are going to think when the book comes out or when the short form comes out. And so often, we talked about this last week when some psychic told Emily, she talked about it on the call. Some psychic told her that her mother was going to stop talking to her when her book came out.
Oh my God.
And
And did
luckily, her
she?
mother still loves her and still talks to her all the time. And, it's fine. But, they don't read it or they don't take notice or their lives are busy or, whatever. So I think that fear is so real, but it can also be co-opted by the critic, the inner critic. And then you're just frozen, like, oh my God, nobody
Yeah.
will like me if I write this, which is totally normal, but it often doesn't happen, which is helpful. Laura, you are so incredible. If you guys don't have this book, I just put all my bracelets on because I realized they were like jingling. Get it. I love it so much, you guys. It is
Thank you.
fantastic. Every time I read it, I laugh again. And also just knowing Laura you are just one of a kind. I adore you. You're a genius on the page, and we're so lucky to have gotten this time. Thank you for being so generous.
Oh, thank you so much, Suzanne. And thank you all for being here. Oh, you know what? Um, Let me put a link in here. Um, okay, so that's the link to my book page, and it has all the, all the places that you can buy it listed there and linked. But also I have a free gift on it. So if you buy it, like, it's still there a couple of years later. It's a prompt guide to write your own, like, page turning collection, essays, memoir, anything like that. And it's a great freebie. It's pretty valuable. So I would, and it's free if you buy a physical copy.
Oh my God, I didn't even know that was there. That's so awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
I haven't promoted it in a while. I just remembered it. So thank you so much for hosting me with your incredible Gateless community. I
Aw.
love Gateless. I love you and
Aw,
everyone here. You're all
I love
great.
you too, honey. Daisy was here, very active in
I
the chat.
saw, I saw Daisy, I saw Sheena. Oh, that reminds me, I'm going to save the chat so I can read it
Yeah,
in a
those
bit.
guys, you guys, they were all on retreat together, and we were on retreat in that particular retreat where they were all together was February of 2020.
2020.
It was
Yeah.
like literally a month before the world shut down. We had no idea. We were like laying all over each other and
Oh
giving
my
each other
God.
like back massages and writing and laughing. We had no idea that what was coming. Is that weird?
I saw one person at the airport in a mask on the way to the retreat. And I was like, oh, why are they being so paranoid?
Oh my God, that's crazy. Yeah, and we all have crazy stories about what happened during that time.
Yep.
That was
Yes,
wild.
we
Thank
do.
you. All right, my
Okay.
loves. So
Okay.
good to see you, Laura. I love
You
you.
too.
Oh, so,
Vox for
so.
you.
Okay, I'll box for you. Mwah. Bye, you guys. We love you
Bye,
too.
everyone.
Team. So great to see you. Thank you for the chats. You were amazing. Mwah.